open wide.
Ready?
Here comes your chunk of Trump.
It's my favorite food.
With your first bite, here's Mark Thompson.
I have a feeling it's going to be beautiful.
This is breaking. The New York Attorney General wants $370 million from Trump and the co-defendants in the civil fraud trial. That's right. It's not the
What?
It's not the $250 million that was originally mentioned. New York Attorney General Letitia James arguing that Trump and his co-defendants' intent to defraud while preparing the former president's financial statements was, quote, inescapable. Seeking the repayment of $370 million in disgorgement, and disgorgement is a ding word, or ill-gotten gains, as she continues. This is, as I mentioned, a dramatic increase over the original figure, which was $250 million. Go back to the argument. This is a quote. The myriad deceptive schemes that they employed to inflate asset values and conceal facts were so outrageous that they belie innocent explanation. Belie will get a ding. Judge Arthur Engoron has already ruled in a summary judgment ruling, as you know, finding that Trump and his co-defendants were liable for persistent and repeated fraud. He also ordered the cancellation of Trump's business certification in New York. Trump's appealed that decision. The court has paused dissolving the companies. Everything's kind of in a pause. But when David Katz rolls around next week, we'll see, we'll check the timeline and everything. But this is big news. The Attorney General is also asking for a 5-year ban for Donald Trump Jr. and Eric Trump. Trump's attorneys arguing today that Engoron, the judge, should reject the allegations against Trump. They say that most of the transactions in the Attorney General's complaint were beyond the statute of limitations, that Trump's statements of financial condition did not contain material misstatements. I mean, they're just essentially, they're making it up. I mean, my God, the judge just looked at it and said, guys, we don't need to go to trial on this. Come on. The 11-week trial was conducted to determine how much the Trumps and their company must pay and the fate of the former president's business in New York. The Attorney General's office sought to prove 6 additional claims against Trump, including conspiracy, issuing false financial statements, falsifying business records, and insurance fraud. Wow. I mean, where's if you get them in order?
How bad do you have to screw up that they no longer want you to do business in their state?
Right.
You're banned. That's it. We're done with you.
Well, Trump has already been banned, as you're aware, from doing the charity business work. Mm-hmm. And I use charity business in air quotes because he stole money from a cancer charity. Look it up. I didn't make it up.
Google it.
I absolutely know that facts are alarmingly clear in the case of Trump there. And now to the other lead story, which, by the way, was reported in great detail along the way during the Trump presidency by David Fahrenthold in the Washington Post. He was a guest on our show. He had all the receipts that were available anyway on the ways that the Trump organization made sick money during the Trump presidency, trading essentially access to the president, and it was an open secret that you could curry favor with Trump by dumping money into his various properties. So we talked about it at length. The Saudis would rent entire floors of the hotel without ever staying in the hotel. This is in the various Trump properties, but the one in Washington was the one that really was the, it was the hotel of choice, and it was the revenue generator of choice.
Saudi Arabia pays cash.
And the Saudis were big. Before the T-Mobile merger, you'll remember T-Mobile bought a bunch of hotel suites. They would buy conference rooms in various Trump properties and never do a conference there. It was just a way to dump money into the Trump coffers. So I guess what I'm getting at is We knew on some level of this going down.
Saudi Arabia pays cash.
But the reality of who spent the money is now becoming clearer. The Chinese government and its state-controlled entities spent over $5.5 million at properties owned by Donald Trump while he was in office. That's the largest total payment made by any single country, according to financial documents cited in a report of House Democrats. This was released yesterday. Those payments collectively included millions of dollars from China's embassy in the U.S., a state-owned Chinese bank accused by the U.S. Department of Justice of helping North Korea evade sanctions, a state-owned Chinese air transit company as well. Accounting records from Trump's former accounting firm, Mazars USA, were obtained by the House Oversight Committee. China is one of 20 countries that made at least $7.8 million in total payments to Trump-owned businesses and properties during the former president's stint in the White House. That included his hotels in D.C., New York, Vegas. The documents offer additional evidence of this rare practice of foreign governments spending money directly with businesses owned by a sitting president.
Crazy. Don't we have the emoluments clause in the Constitution to prevent such a thing? And I go back to the 14th Amendment, right? If it's not used, if we have it and no one uses it, then what good is it? And this is the law of the land. Well, the Article 1, Section 9 of the Constitution, the emoluments clause, forbids U.S. office holders from accepting any present emolument, office, or title from a foreign country because they don't want a sitting U.S. president or any office holder to accept foreign influence, domestic influence, or the influence of one branch of government over the other. So why hasn't he been charged with this?
This is something that, like many things in the law, is interpretive. Because I raised this early on, as you know. I was screaming this from the rooftops before Trump even became president. But to me, everything was so obvious. There was no sleight of hand there. Mark Leibovich's book called... What was it? What was his most recent book called, Albert? Could you check it? It's a very deliberate and complete review of all the ways in which Trump businesses had their coffers fed by those trying to ingratiate themselves to the former president. Ingratiate would be a ding word. The idea somehow that you could have this centerpiece was the hotel in Washington, but oftentimes it was some of these other properties, and they were used. And what Leibovich does really well, I think, was it called something like
Thank you for your servitude.
Thank you, thank you for your servitude.
Yeah.
In Thank You for Your Servitude, he lays out, and this was a compilation of some stuff that we knew, but he's a great writer and he laid it out really well. In Thank You for Your Servitude, he essentially talks about how this place, this hotel, the Trump Hotel in Washington, just a few blocks from the White House, became a clearinghouse essentially for those who were trying to curry favor with the president and his administration. So you had a lot of administration officials there, and they were feted in all these different ways, not to mention, as I've just suggested, many rooms and floors of the hotel were bought up by foreign powers or domestic concerns who had business before the chief executive. So all I'm trying to get at is this is unprecedented, but now to your emoluments clause. You'd think, wow, well, Mark, all that stuff you just said, that's emolument violation.
Right.
It's interpretive.
How many laws does he have to break? How many parts of the Constitution does he have to trample on in order to be tossed out? It's crazy.
If you talk to lawyers who have some knowledge of the Constitution and such, they will show you all the ways that you can shimmy around this stuff. My father is a constitutional lawyer. And I hit him during the Trump administration with exactly what Kim is saying, which is, come on, dude. The guy is, he's lining his pockets right now with foreign money. As I said, the Farenthold reporting in the Washington Post had chapter and verse on this with receipts. And my old man said, emoluments is one of those things, like, what is it? Like it's not a, I said, what is it? He's getting money from a foreign power is what it is. He said, yeah, but you can argue the gray area of this, the shade of this. And I thought, wow. The other thing I think, Kim, is what you were suggesting, which is you need a cop on the beat. If you don't have somebody enforcing it, calling it out, if you don't have a cop on the beat, then it goes completely unchecked. And that's what happened in the last administration. You had no congressional effort to call him to task on this or to take him to task on this because who controlled Congress at the time? The GOP. They're not going to call in their own guy. And by the time the Democrats took hold, and we know the Democrats are weak sauce when it comes to trying to crack the whip, they did nothing on these things that we're talking about. I think you're right. I think it's clear as day. But again, it does not, for whatever reason, get Trump in trouble. Obviously, if Trump were to retake power, it would be all bets are off. All bets are off.
Scary.
But this is the latest, and the latest comes in the form of rare looks, I guess you would say, at documents and receipts that suggest that China is one of 20 countries that made at least $7.8 million in total payments to Trump-owned businesses. And the last thing I'll say, and this is, big news because it's China, but the soaking of the U.S. taxpayer was something that Trump was doing in big numbers through Secret Service. Farenthold reported on that in the Washington Post. So the way Secret Service works, and I'll just do this real quick and we'll move on, is Secret Service needs to protect the president and his family. And so Secret Service needs to book hotel rooms wherever the Trump family is going to be. Okay, well, so they book the rate at the top rate. The U.S. taxpayer, despite the fact that Trump said he was giving him a break, didn't get a break. Actually, there was a markup on a lot of the Secret Service room and board that they were getting at Trump properties. But it goes beyond that. When Trump says, I'm not sure if I'm going to go to Mar-a-Lago this weekend or if I'm going to my property in Scotland. I'm thinking about going there because I need to check on some things there. Or maybe I may actually just go up to New Jersey to my property there. I'm not sure. I'll let you know. When Trump says that, because the Secret Service needs to know days in advance, what does the Secret Service do? They book rooms for all of their agents in those properties that I just mentioned.
Oh, man.
And that costs the American taxpayer money, even though the president isn't going to stay there. These are the ways that Trump Inc. continued to soak the American taxpayer, to benefit from foreign powers who had business before the chief executive. It's awful, but it's real. That is your chunk of Trump.
That's it for this edition.
Well, I really enjoyed it.
But make sure to join us again next time
I think you might want to listen. There's nothing wrong with listening.
for another chunk of Trump.
Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.